Hello everyone, welcome to kitch&more. We are now in English 7 Quarter 1 Week 2 lesson. Today we'll talk about something fun and creative. It's poetry. This lesson is called The Basic Elements of Poetry. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Here is our learning competency. Analyze literary text as expressions of individual or communal values within. Think about it, feel it. Let's start by thinking about these simple questions. Have you ever read or written a poem? What was it about? What comes to your mind when you hear the word poetry? Maybe you imagine rhyming words or something that sounds musical, or maybe you remember a poem you once heard or even tried writing yourself. Now here's another one. What do you feel when you read a poem? Does it make you happy, sad, inspired, or maybe it even confuses you sometimes? That's totally okay. Poetry can make us feel many things, and that's part of what makes it so powerful. So before we begin, just take a few seconds to think about your own answers. You don't need to write them down, just pause and reflect for a bit. This will help you connect more deeply with our topic. Ready? Great! Let's explore together what makes a poem and why it's such a special form of art and expression. So what is poetry again? Poetry is a type of writing that uses creative language, rhythm, and emotion to share feelings, ideas, or stories. So what exactly is poetry? Poetry is a special way of expressing thoughts and emotions. Poets use creative words, rhythm, and sometimes rhyme to share their feelings or tell a story. Unlike regular sentences, poems can be short or long, and they often create strong images or feelings in our minds. What are the basic elements of poetry? Let's start with number 1, form. Form refers to how the poem is put together. Think of it like the design or layout of a poem. On this slide, you'll see some parts that make up a poem's form. These include things like the rhyme scheme, the rhythm or meter, stanzas, and even the length of each line. Now let's zoom in on one part of form, which is the rhyme scheme. So what is a rhyme scheme? It's the pattern of words that rhyme at the end of lines in a poem. Poets use rhyme to give their poems a musical quality, and it also makes them more fun to read or recite. To help us see the rhythm pattern, we use letters like A, B, C to mark the lines that sound the same at the end. Let's look at this short poem. Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. Can you hear it? Blue and you rhyme. They both end in the same sound, so we give them the same letter B. Red and sweet don't rhyme with anything else here, so they get their own letters A and C. So the rhyme scheme here is AB, CB. Easy, right? Rhyme schemes can be simple or complex, and sometimes poems don't rhyme at all. That's okay too. But many poems do, and this is how we figure out their rhyme pattern. Still under form, let's talk about one of the most fun parts of poetry, the rhythm and meter. Rhythm and meter refer to the pattern flow of sound in poetry. The rhythm is the beat or flow of a poem. Have you ever listened to a song and noticed how your head starts nodding or your foot starts tapping? That's because of the rhythm, the beat. Well, poems can have rhythm too. Rhythm in poetry is the musical flow or beat that you hear when you read a poem out loud. It's what makes a poem sound like a song sometimes. Now here comes the cool part, the meter. Meter is the pattern behind that rhythm. It's made up of syllables, the small sound units in words, and how they are stressed or unstressed. Now let's break that down. A stressed syllable is the one you say louder or with more force, like the word boom. An unstressed syllable is softer, like ba in baboom. We can use this symbol to show unstressed syllable and this one for stressed syllable. Look at this example. One of the most common types of meter is called iambic meter. This is when the pattern goes da-dum, unstressed, then stressed, like a heartbeat. Here's an example. I walk the line between the stars. Now try clapping with me to the beat. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. Each da-dum is 1 foot in poetry, and since this is in the pattern of unstressed followed by a stressed syllable, it is called an iamb. What is an iamb? It is a type of metrical foot in poetry that consists of 2 syllables. The first is unstressed and the second is stressed, like the beat da-dum. Take note that a line can have many feet depending on how long it is. Let's try a fun line together. The sun will rise again today. Hear the beat? That's the rhythm created by the meter. Not all poems have a clear or regular rhythm, and that's okay too. Some poets choose to write in free verse, which doesn't follow a strict meter. But when a poem does have rhythm and meter, it helps make the poem sound smooth, musical, and easy to remember. So next time you read a poem out loud, try to feel its beat. You might even want to clap, tap, or snap along. Let's now talk about another important part of a poem still under form, and that is the stanza. A stanza is a group of lines in a poem. You can think of it like a paragraph in a story or essay. Just like paragraphs organize ideas in prose, stanzas organize ideas or images in poetry. Here's what you need to remember. A stanza is made up of 2 or more lines. It's usually separated from the next stanza by a blank line. Each stanza may talk about a different idea or describe a different image or feeling. Here's a quick example of a 2-stanza poem. So for the first stanza, we have, the sun is shining bright today, birds are chirping, skies are blue, flowers bloom along the way, the world feels fresh and new. And for the second stanza, we have, but soon the clouds begin to form, the wind picks up, the trees all sway, the rain comes down, it feels so warm, another rhythm in the day. So that's an example of a 2-stanza poem. Each stanza in this poem has 4 lines, so we call that a quatrain. Some poems have stanzas with 2 lines called couplets, or even longer ones with 6, 8, or more lines. Just like a song has verses, a poem has stanzas. So when you're reading a poem, pay attention to how it's broken into stanzas. It can help you understand the poem structure, rhythm, and message better. Alright, let's now talk about line length. Still under form. Line length simply means how many words or syllables are in one line of a poem. Some lines are very short, just a few words. Others are long, like full sentences or even longer. But why does it matter? Line length helps to create the rhythm and feeling of a poem. Short lines often feel fast, sudden, sharp like quick beats in music. They can make a poem feel exciting or dramatic. Here's an example of a poem with short lines. The wind blows hard, trees bend, birds fly. See how fast that feels? On the other hand, long lines can sound calm, flowing, reflective like smooth waves or someone telling a story. Longer lines slow us down, letting us take our time with words. So when poets choose line length, they're not just choosing at random. Here is an example of a poem with long lines. The soft breeze carried the scent of flowers across the open field, as the sun gently warmed the earth beneath my feet. So here, longer lines slow us down, letting us take our time with the words. So when poets choose line length, they're not just choosing at random, they're setting the mood. Whether it's a fast-paced action or a peaceful moment, line length helps us feel it. Cool, right? Like how music has slow and fast parts, poems do too, with line length. Now that we've learned about one of the basic elements of poetry, which is the form, let's zoom in a little closer to something smaller but super important, and that is the line, the basic unit of a poem. A line is just one row of words in a poem. Don't be fooled. This tiny piece does a lot of heavy lifting. It helps shape the poem's rhythm, sets the tone, and even affects how the poem makes us feel. Unlike sentences in stories, lines in poetry don't always follow grammar rules. A line can be short, long, or even just one word. It can be a complete sentence, just a phrase, or even one powerful word. Here is an example of a line. The moonlight glows across the sea. Simple, right? But that one line already paints a picture in our minds. It has rhythm, it sets a mood. Some lines are short and snappy, while others stretch out, taking their time. So remember, each line is like a brush stroke in a painting. One by one, they help create the bigger picture of the poem. Let us now talk about the third basic element of poetry, which is imagery, and we already tackled this in our first video for English 7 Quarter 1, and that is week 1. But let's talk about it here also. Imagery uses descriptive language to paint pictures in the reader's mind. It's when those descriptions are so vivid, they create a picture in your head. Like when you read, "The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink." You can almost see it, right? That's imagery. It makes you feel like you're inside the poem or story. To understand better, let's talk about the 7 types of imagery. We have visual, auditory, gustatory, tactile, olfactory, kinesthetic, and organic. Each one focuses on a different sense. Let's get to know them one by one and see how poets use these tools to create magical experiences. Let's start with visual imagery or sense of sight. It helps us see scenes, colors, and shapes in our minds. For example, the golden sun spilled across the sky. Visual imagery helps us picture things. Like in this example, we can imagine a beautiful sunset. Poets use words like colors, sizes, and shapes to make us see the world. Then we have auditory image, which is the sense of hearing, and it's referring to sound. It appeals to our sense of hearing. For example, leaves rustled like whispers of the wind. Auditory imagery makes us hear things. Poets describe sounds, birds singing, wind blowing, or even silence. This creates mood and atmosphere. Close your eyes. Can you hear the leaves rustling? This time, let's proceed with gustatory imagery, or the sense of taste. It describes flavors and tastes. For example, the sweet burst of ripe mangoes melted in my mouth. Gustatory imagery makes us taste what the poet tastes. Think of a juicy mango or spicy adobo. Your mouth waters, right? That's the power of words. Then let's have the tactile imagery or the sense of touch. It describes textures and temperature. For example, soft velvet petals brushed my fingertips. Tactile imagery lets us feel things. Think of how soft a teddy bear is or how rough sandpaper feels. Poets use this to make us feel the environment. Then we have the olfactory imagery or the sense of smell. It focuses on scents and smells. For example, lavender fields perfumed the morning air. Olfactory imagery makes us smell what's in the poem. From the scent of roses to the aroma of coffee, smell connects strongly to our memories and emotions. Then we have kinesthetic imagery or the sense of movement. It describes movement and physical activity. For example, waves danced and leapt against the rocky shore. Kinesthetic imagery brings action to life. It helps us feel movement like running, flying, or the waves dancing. It adds energy and grace to poetry. And the last one is organic imagery or internal feelings. It shows internal sensations like hunger, pain, joy, calmness. For example, warmth spread through my chest like sunlight. Organic imagery describes what's happening inside us, our emotions, hunger, peace, or fear. It helps readers connect with the poet on a deep human level. Now that we've learned how poets create pictures in your mind with imagery, let's explore how they create music using sound devices. So, sound devices is another basic element of poetry. Sound devices are techniques poets use to make their poems sound pleasing when read aloud. They add rhythm, fun, and flow to poetry. Think of them as the music of the poem, even without instruments. You may remember that we already talked about rhyme and rhythm when we discussed form. These are sound devices too. Let's review them quickly. First, let's have rhyme. Rhyme are words that have similar ending sounds. They are words that sound alike, like cat and hat, and blue and you. Then let's have a rhythm. This is the beat of the poem, like the dum feeling. Now let's add more sound tools to our list. These are words that have similar ending sounds. Then we have alliteration. Alliteration is repeating the same sound at the start of words. Example is Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. As you can see, we are repeating the same consonant sound at the beginning of each word. Then we have assonance. It is repeating vowel sounds in nearby words. For example, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. This is an example of assonance because it repeats the same vowel sound A in the words rain, Spain, mainly, and plain. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds within nearby words, which gives the sentence a rhythmic and musical quality. Next is consonance. It is repeating consonant sounds within or at the end of the words. For example, the lumpy, bumpy road. The lumpy, bumpy road is an example of consonants because of the repeated MP sound of consonant in the words lumpy and bumpy. Next is onomatopoeia. These are words that imitate sounds. For example, buzz, splash, crash, or sizzle. These words help you hear the poem. All of these sound devices work together to make poems come alive when we read them out loud. Now that we've explored sound and imagery, it's time to dive into one of the most exciting parts of poetry, that is figurative language. Figurative language goes beyond the literal meaning of words. Poets use it to make their writing more vivid, emotional, and imaginative. Let's check out some of the most common types. First, we have a simile. A simile compares two different things using the words like or as. Its purpose is to make descriptions more vivid and easier to imagine. For example, her voice was as soft as a whisper. This means her voice was really quiet, but by comparing it to a whisper, we can easily imagine how it sounds. Next is metaphor. A metaphor also compares two things but without using like or as. It says one thing is another. So the purpose is to create a strong image or meaning. For example, time is a thief. Time doesn't literally steal, but this metaphor shows how time can quickly take away moments from our lives. Then we have personification. Personification gives human actions or feelings to non-human things like objects or animals. Its purpose is to make descriptions more lively or emotional. For example, the wind whispered through the trees. Wind can't really whisper, but this makes it feel soft and gentle, like it's alive. Next, we have hyperbole. Hyperbole is a huge exaggeration used for effect, and its purpose is to show strong feelings or make something sound impressive or funny. For example, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Of course, you won't actually eat a horse, but it shows how extremely hungry you are. Now we have oxymoron. An oxymoron is when two opposite or very different words are put together to make a new, often surprising meaning. Its purpose is to catch attention or express a complex idea. For example, the ending of the story was bittersweet, bringing both tears and smile. Bittersweet is an oxymoron because it combines two opposite emotions, bitter, which is sadness, and sweet, which is happiness, into one expression. Now that we've explored the sound, structure, and language of poems, let's talk about one of the most important parts, the theme. The theme of a poem is the big idea or the main message. It's not just what the poem is talking about, it's what the poet wants us to understand or feel. Think of it as the lesson or meaning behind the words. Sometimes the theme is very clear. Other times, we have to read carefully and think deeply to find it. Just like in stories or movies, poem can be about love, nature, courage, sadness, hope, or anything that matters to people. We have, for example, if a poem describes how a seed grows into a strong tree, the theme might be growth or patience. If it talks about missing someone, the theme could be loss or love. If it tells of standing up for what's right, the theme might be courage or justice. To find the theme, ask yourself, what is this poem really trying to say? What feeling or idea stays with me after reading it? Theme is powerful. It connects the poet to the reader. Even if a poem is short, the message can stay with us for a long time. Now let's talk about the seventh basic element of poetry. It is the context in poetry. Context helps us understand why a poem was written and what it means. Let's say you found a mysterious letter. Wouldn't you want to know who wrote it, when it was written, and what was happening at that time? That's exactly what we do when we look at the context of a poem. Understanding the context of a poem helps us discover its deeper meaning. There are three main types you should know. First is biographical context. It is about the poet's life, the personal experiences, feelings, and beliefs. If a poet writes about war and we find out they were a soldier, that gives the poem more emotional power, right? Their background helps us understand where they're coming from. So always ask, what do I know about the writer's life? Did they go through anything that shows up in their poem? Next is the historical context. It's about the time the poem was written. What was going on in the world back then? If a poem talks about hunger or protest and was written during a revolution or pandemic, that time period affects the meaning. Ask yourself, what was happening in history when this poem was written? How might that have influenced the poet's words? And the last one is socio-cultural context. It's about the society and culture around the poet, their values, beliefs, customs, and community. A poem that celebrates nature might come from a culture that deeply respects the earth, or a poem challenging tradition might reflect a changing society. You ask, what beliefs or traditions might the poem be reacting to? How might different readers understand it based on their own culture? And that wraps up our lesson on the basic elements of poetry. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you understand poetry better, don't forget to like, share with your classmates, and of course subscribe to Kitch&more for more fun and easy lessons just like this. See you next time, young poets. Keep reading, keep imagining, and keep writing. Bye!